Hey, what's going on? Quinn David Furness here, coming to you live for a May 12th, 2019 Happy Mother's Day edition of Quinn David Furness Presents the Beantown Podcast, or the People's Podcast, and it is widely known across the nation. Your number one source for misinformation worldwide. And we're coming to you live as we do all of our episodes. Again, it's live when I record it, not when you listen to it. But beauty really is in the eye of the beholder. Beholder is really an interesting word when you think about it, because it's a word, yes, but we really only use it in the context of the phrase beauty in the eye of the beholder. It's very much like a King James Middle English type of thing. Beheld, behold. I think behold, I am the Lord or something. That's maybe a Bible verse. We'd have to consult Preacher Quinn, who only makes an appearance once or twice a year around Easter. And we're going to have to wait for that to circle back around and write that down for next Easter sermon. But behold, I don't even know how we got here. Behold my podcast, the Beantown Podcast, which is one of Baltimore City's top 500 podcasts. Although we're going to have to change that slogan pretty soon here, maybe. I don't know. I haven't really thought about this, but for those who haven't figured it out yet, we're taking Beantown Podcast on the road permanently, if you will. So we've toured in the past, but typically we'll come back to Beantown or Baltimore to sort of home base here at 817 St. Paul Street. But I am now telling the world I'm coming out, like my favorite Aretha Franklin song. I'm coming out specifically to Chicago. So we're moving Beantown Podcast to Chicago permanently. We have this week's episode happening live from Baltimore, and then next week's episode will also be live from Baltimore, and then the week after that will either be our farewell episode of Baltimore, or we'll be coming to you live from the West Coast. Haven't decided yet, now my weeks are mixed up. This week's in Baltimore. Next week's in Baltimore. The week after that is either Baltimore or Chicago. I haven't decided yet where I want to record. And then the week after that is either West Coast or Baltimore. Probably Baltimore, because I got June 2nd. I got a red-eye flight Saturday night into Sunday morning. So we'll figure it out. For you, the listener, though, all you got to know is that, yes, even in the face of moving and yada, 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 all that stuff, Beantown must go on. Beantown will continue to be produced, written, and directed weekly by me, Quinn David Furness. Listener discretion is advised when you're listening to the Beantown Podcast. Number one, we will occasionally use some kid-tested, mother-not-approved language, if you will. And then number two, the podcast is just objectively terrible. And what I love about the Beantown Podcast is it's not really ever gotten better outside of like the first month or two where we were actually learning how to do a podcast and all the tech and stuff. From that point, I think we kind of hit our stride last fall or so, I would say. And then 2019's been I think just less exciting overall. It's kind of like True Detective, right? First season, you got Woody Harrelson and the other guy who does it with Matthew McConaughey, right? True Detective. Never seen it, but I heard things. And then season 2 is like, okay, it's still fine. It just doesn't quite hold up to the first season. But if season 3 of True Detective with two-time Oscar-winning actor Mahershala Ali is any indication, 2020 is going to be a big year for the Beantown Podcast. I don't know. Maybe we'll make it a little bit more political. No one asked for that. No one really ever asked for anything. Even though we have a new website, beantownpodcast.com, and, of course, an email address, It's sleek, it's shiny, it's new, it's elegant. Beantown Podcast, yahoo.com. That's Beantown, yahoo.com. I wasn't sure like how I wanted to mess up the spelling or the saying, and then I kind of started, and then I didn't really know what to do. So you got what you got. Speaking of the website, beantownpodcast.com, yesterday we made big updates for the first time in a couple of months. So most of you probably use the Beantown Podcast to keep up with us, with our podcast and our blog. But one thing that we've been pushing for in 2019, and you all know this, the fans of the podcast, hashtag friends of the podcast, also known as Beaners, you know this, Cuts by Q, my little side business here. Baltimore's one of Baltimore, I'd say like top, because there are actually a lot of like boutiques and barbershops in Baltimore. So I would put us in like top 300 range, I think, for like barbershops and boutiques. Maybe the Beantown Barbershop Quartet side idea. Let me write that down when we get to Chicago. I'll have some friends that might be interested in that. But we do haircuts, $20 flat rate for everything, including shaves and other cuts. I'll shave your chest. I'll shave your back. Shave your pubes even. I don't know. I didn't say that. I didn't know your words. But long story short here, I feel like we're really all over the place this morning. You can go to beantownpodcast.com, and now on our menu we have an updated item. So it used to just be home, podcast, Beantown blog, and contact me. Now it's home, podcast, Beantown blog, then Cuts by Q, then contact me. So you can go to our Cuts by Q page and you can see a smattering, let's write a smattering, SMATTERING, of all of our different cuts. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. You know, they say that 97% of the world is covered in water, or could be covered by water found in icebergs. And also when you're looking at an iceberg, you're only seeing like 74% of it. So you can just check out 74% of the cuts we offer, and then the other 26% is hidden under the surface, or I think I got that mixed up, but it doesn't really matter. For the 6 of you who are listening, you can tweet at us and air your grievances. But that's what's going on. It's a rainy day on the East Coast. It started raining about, a day ago, about 24 hours. So we were out yesterday, a couple different festivals. Yesterday was a big fest day in Baltimore. It's a lot of like street fests, things that are not overly packed or just overwhelming in general. Just kind of chill hangouts, a lot of arts and crafts being sold, some food, occasionally a drink. Although neither of the fests I was at yesterday had a big like drinking culture. So first we go to Remfest, REM, which I had frankly misled a little bit because I thought we were going to be showing up and it was going to be I thought to see you cry, I'm losing my religion. Kind of turned into Billy Joe Armstrong at the end there. Okay, let's just put this out there. It wasn't REM the band. So strike one. Fool me once. Show up. It's actually named after the neighborhood Remington where it's taking place, which I should have figured out long before, but that's the neighborhood directly south of the neighborhood I work in. So we go up there, and it was pretty, imagine like the most basic street fair with like one guy playing live music on stage who was fine, but it was just like this guy with an acoustic guitar, like I'm sure very local, and he wasn't amazing, he wasn't bad, but it's just like, okay, whatever. It would be like if I got up there with a guitar and I, had some talent. Like imagine what it would be like if it was that. So we walked around and looked at a couple of the different things and didn't really buy anything, but there wasn't much for like food or drink going on there in general. There was like, a main part where you can get some of your like classic food things. But in terms of the booths, it was almost all arts and crafts, and there weren't like one of the guys I was with was really looking for fudge. There was no fudge. So we were there for about an hour, and then we drove down to the one I was more excited about. Well, I'll say this. I was originally very excited for RemFest because I'm thinking Losing My Religion, other REM songs we could have gotten to hear, but no. We go down to Jazz Fest, Fells Point, Baltimore, which I'm not the type of person who goes around knocking Baltimore all the time, especially not for the reasons that people who don't know Baltimore knock it for. But one thing that Baltimore does not do well, and I'm not afraid to say this, they don't do live music well. Now, I'm not expecting Baltimore, and I wasn't when I got here 2 years ago. I wasn't expecting it to be Nashville. I wasn't expecting it to be Memphis, Chicago, New York, whatever. But, like, give me a little something, you know, a little taste. Baltimore doesn't really do, like, concerts in the park. There aren't very many, like, bars where you can just, like, consistently have access to live music. Unfortunately, Baltimore is so close to D.C., which is really nice in some ways, but in other ways it's really a curse because D.C. ends up getting a lot of the really good acts and tours and all that stuff, and Baltimore really doesn't get that very much. And then when people do come, tickets tend to be like way too expensive. Like Tom Jones was here this past winter, and the nosebleed tickets for Tom Jones were like $120, and that's like, it shouldn't be that way. Out in the county in Columbia, there's a big amphitheater, and they get a lot of popular acts, but it's like, can you technically get to there from Baltimore City with public transportation on a bus? Yes, but it's not easy. It involves like transferring and then getting off a bus and walking 20 minutes through town, and it's just like, this isn't, the whole thing's like an hour to 90 minutes one way. And it's hard enough getting there like before a concert at a normal time. You try to leave after at 10 o'clock at night. Well, maybe there'll be that bus still running. Maybe there won't be. It's kind of like at BWI, the airport serving Baltimore and Washington. Well, it's about 8 miles south of, not even that, like 6 or 7 miles south of the city of Baltimore. But if you get there outside of time when the light rail is not running, and light rail is okay hours but not great hours, there's not like a 24/7 bus that takes you from the airport to the city, which is just fascinating to me. To have a city of 620,000 people and there's not always a consistent public transportation option to get to the city is just like almost mind-boggling. MTA, Maryland Transportation Administration. I don't know. I get the TAs mixed up because Chicago is Transit Authority, I believe. I don't remember what Maryland is, and I don't know what New York is, which is also MTA, but a different MTA. They have, a lot of buses, a lot of routes, some more reliable than others, but to not have something that takes you from your city's major airport, your city's really only airport, to the city in like off hours. I understand if it's a bus that runs once an hour, okay, whatever, but they're just from like, I don't know, 11 p.m. to like 6 a.m. It just doesn't exist, which is unfortunate. I will frequently get back from Chicago on personal travel and have to take an Uber because, if your flight leaves Chicago at 7 p.m., which is a reasonable time for a flight, you lose an hour in the sky. It's a 90-minute flight, so you're getting back at, what do we say, 9:30 or so. You're probably going to have to take an Uber. So that's what's going on. I don't even know how we got to that topic, but Jazz Fest. Jazz Fest. How did we get from Jazz Fest to transportation? I don't know. But we go to Jazz Fest. It was fun. We were there for one set. I think there were 4 or 5 different acts going throughout the day. Each one had like a 90-minute set, which is pretty good actually for like a little local Jazz Fest. To have 90 minutes to play is nice. We were there for I had researched them before, advertised as a 10-piece brass band. Well, we get there and it's an 11-piece brass band. It's like when you go to KFC and you order a bucket of white meat, and you say, "Give me 10 drumsticks, baby." And you're eating your drumsticks, and you're not really paying attention, but you're mentally counting as you're eating, on the road, texting, eating. Grease is everywhere. It's an all-American meal. You're like, well, that was my 10th drumstick. And you peer into that bucket. Imagine leaning over into the passenger seat at a red light, mind you, and you peer. Imagine yourself peering. It's a great verb. P-E-E-R. And there's an extra drumstick number 11. Oh, man, your day is made right there. I will say as a side note, you might look at me and think, well, this guy has KFC at least twice a week. I don't think I've ever actually gone to KFC and ordered something. I'm trying to think. Maybe once in high school. They used to have that, was it called like a double-decker sandwich or something? You guys know what I'm talking about. It's like a sandwich, but instead of bread, it's 2 like chicken breasts, and then in between I think is like cheese and bacon and something. That's got a name. It's like the Club Combo or something, or I don't know. What is that called? It's not a double-decker because there's nothing that's like, it's like the smash, the chicken smash or something. Hang on, we're going to Google. KFC chicken instead of bread. This reminds me of the episode we had with Brother Walter Furness about a month ago. We wrote a cover letter for a Northwestern assistant men's basketball position. Haven't heard back yet, but fingers crossed. The Double Down. I was close with Double Decker. I knew it was alliterative. You go to Vegas, Double Down means something slightly different. The Double Down contains bacon, cheese, and sauce between 2 pieces of chicken fillet. Let's look at these. Did you know you Google food on Wikipedia, and now it's giving you the nutrition facts? I just noticed that this morning. I was looking at, what was it? It was like Minnesota long grain wild rice or something, which I cooked. We'll talk about that in a second. Okay. But Wikipedia will now tell you nutrition facts, which is very exciting. Nutritional value per 248 grams. A gram is really an interesting unit of measurement. I feel like maybe this goes for the whole world, but certainly us Americans, we really have no concept of what a gram is, right? An ounce, we're like, okay, get that a little bit, understand pounds, understand feet, yards, meters, we do our best. Inches, we got on lockdown. Centimeters, okay. Millimeters, really tough. But a gram, oh man, I don't know what a gram is. It's kind of in the same category as a watt for me. You might have just said, what is he talking about? A watt, W-A-T-T, like JJ or TJ, or a unit of power. Watt. Unit of power would have been a good nickname for my penis back in high school. But the Double Down has 18 grams of carbohydrates. I don't think that's that bad, probably because there's no bread. So I'm actually surprised it's even that high. Probably because the chicken is breaded. 1 gram of sugar, 1 gram of dietary fiber. Again, all these references to grams. Not really sure what these mean, but 37 grams, again, of saturated fat. That sounds like a lot. For those friends of the podcast out there or beaners out there who are listening, who are nutritionists, you can let us know in a comment what a gram really means. But 11 grams of saturated fat. Oh, this is interesting. Let's talk about this. So I mentioned 37 grams of saturated fat. Again, we're talking about the double down from KFC. And we got here because I said, I don't think I've ever gone to KFC, but I'm trying to think maybe one time in high school I went to KFC to get a Double Down just to see what it was like. So there's 37 grams of saturated fat. Then the breakdown is 11 grams of okay, we're going to try this one more time. 37 grams of fat. That's that. And then below that, and we're off of Wikipedia here, 11 grams of saturated fat, 1 gram of trans fat. So that adds up to 12 grams underneath the 37 grams of fat. So what's going on with the other 25 grams? Are there 3 types of fat, saturated, trans, and regular fat? I don't know. I feel like I know less about fat than I do about grams, which is ironic when you look at me. But 52 grams of protein, that's real good. It's because of all that chicken and bacon. Minerals, sodium. Oh, this is good. 1,880 milligrams or 1.8 milligrams or 1.8 grams of sodium, which is equal to 125% your daily value. So if you go to KFC and you grab 2 Double Downs and wash it down with a Diet Coke, you're already looking at 250% of your daily sodium intake. 150 milligrams of cholesterol. That's one of those things that just sounds like a lot, but cholesterol really is, it's kind of like midi-chlorians in Star Wars. No one really actually understands them. Let's see. Okay, so that's the Double Down. But how we got from 10 to 11, we were talking about having an extra one that you weren't expecting. I don't remember what the original reference was, but we can go back and listen to it on the tape. I was able to cook Friday night for the first time. I hadn't cooked in so long because I'd been on the road. And it was the type of thing, so I hadn't gone to the grocery store, and I still haven't. The grocery store is open for another 4 hours. It's raining right now. It's not going to stop raining. But it's like if I want to eat this week, then I really should go to the grocery store. It's a classic conundrum. But so I pull out, go raid the fridge. I'm getting very belchy here. On Friday night, just looking for anything that was like cookable. So actually nothing came from the fridge. In the freezer, I had some frozen broccoli. Always talk about kid-tested, mother-approved. And then I also had one package of chicken tenderloins. Right? I think I bought them because they were on sale. Normally I'm a chicken breast type of guy, but these were chicken tenderloins. And then I had some Minnesota long grain wild rice, which if you don't know, it's the black wild rice. Once you go black, you never go back. It's true for rice. It's true for men. But that stuff is good, man. You make wild rice, it cooks for about an hour. You throw some salt in there, a little pepper, maybe a little bit of butter. If you can cook it in like chicken stock or vegetable broth, you can do that. That's really good. I didn't have any of that stuff, but it adds to the richness, the boldness of the rice. But I was trying to figure out what to do because, you can just have rice, chicken, and broccoli. But I'm thinking, let me spice up this chicken and broccoli a little bit with a little bit of sauce. So I'm rummaging. Again, the word is rummage, R-U-M-M-A-G-E. I'm rummaging through my pantry, my extensive pantry, which is mostly dried goods, looking for some sort of sauce that I can scare up. Again, the word is scare, S-C-A-R-E. And I'm like, I got a little bit of honey here. I got a full spice cabinet, basil, thyme, parsley, sage, rosemary, onion powder, garlic powder, red hot chili peppers. You open it up and give it away, give it away, give it away now. What you got to give it to your mama. Still from my old grocery store in Rogers Park where I'm moving back to. So my red chili pepper flakes have survived 2 years in Beantown. If you're wondering, it's a pretty big container, which is why it survived, because think about how often I make chili. Anyone who knows me knows that I love making my chili in the winter, and I season the crap out of that stuff with, paprika, cayenne, chili flakes, all that good stuff. So I'm looking for some sauce to make, and I'm thinking, okay, I got one stick of butter that's made it through the fridge, and hopefully still good. I feel like butter lasts a long time. It'd probably been in there for like 3 weeks. So I got some butter. I got some honey. My signature item, I always have some on hand. I have some brown spicy mustard. Well, I'm thinking, honey mustard is like a classic thing. I don't know how well it's going to work with the brown spicy, but let's try it out. So I made a nice concoction of brown spicy mustard and honey and about 2 tablespoons of butter, and I threw some salt in there, and I put some garlic powder in there as well. And, I stir it vigorously. Websites and cooking shows will frequently direct you to stir something vigorously or to be stirred with a great deal of vigor. Again, the word is vigor, vigor. And you make it I stirred it in with the chicken and the broccoli, and then what I ended up doing is just taking a bowl out, putting a nice base of Minnesota long grain black wild rice in there, and then pouring the chicken, broccoli, and honey mustard with butter solution into or on top of the rice, and it made 2 servings. I had it for more than 2 servings, but like 2 Quinn sized servings, so like 3 double downs at KFC. And I had that for dinner on Friday night, and I had it again for dinner last night, and it was pretty good. Okay, so how can we improve in the future? First time cooking in like 2 weeks, 2+ weeks. If you can cook that wild rice in some sort of flavored broth without the sodium getting out of hand, that's good stuff. You really want to do that. It just adds a little bit more flavor to the rice. You don't have to do as much work on the back end to try to bring out the flavor. The rice by itself is actually very good. It tastes like rice, and it's not going to taste like anything else. But in terms of like the texture, that Minnesota long grain wild rice is good stuff, man. When you cook it perfectly with just the right amount of water, throw some salt in there, and you get kind of a nice combination of rice that hasn't really popped out of its black sheath yet or coating, and then you get a nice kind of half that, half rice that has kind of emerged from its black encasing, if you will, and it makes for a nice, beautiful, rich texture. You had the chicken on there, which I was a little concerned about because I'd had the frozen chicken, that tenderloins. I had bought it on sale back in like March or something, so this stuff was a couple months old. But that's the beauty of freezing. And then the broccoli also, nothing fresh about it. It'd probably been in my freezer for like a month, but it worked out okay. Saute the chicken, bring it out of the pan, saute the broccoli, add the chicken, make the sauce, add the sauce in there, and then ladle, another good verb, ladle it over the rice. So it worked out pretty well. Call me Chef Quinn. We mentioned this before, but shout out and thank you to Uncle Tunde and Auntie Anna of Hockessin, Delaware, for gifting me about this time last year with a University of Delaware chemical engineering class of 2018. They grow up so fast. It's a mug. And I don't know how many ounces, going back to this topic of units of measurement, I don't know exactly how many ounces it is. But judging by what I know of ounces, I would guess this thing can probably hold about, I don't know, between 25 and 30 ounces. But it's a nice glass mug. I was at my, about this time last year, I was in Delaware, at the University of Delaware. My uncle used to work, and he had just a bunch of these for his graduating class of 2018, chemical engineering. And so he was nice enough to gift me with one. But it's good stuff. One other quick thing that I want to mention, then we're going to get to some ads, then we're going to talk about the holiday today. Thinking of a way to energize the fans, the listener base, get us excited, get us excitable, turn on the fans. And I'm thinking, we've done some hats, we've done some T-shirts in the past. It's good stuff, but if you're wondering, every time I do that, I lose money, and not extravagant amounts of money, but a little bit, because I don't want to charge the fans the flat price that it takes for me to manufacture that, even though that's like how economics works, because the prices, when you have such a small and intimate listener base like ours, although we've grown this time last year, probably getting like 80 listens an episode. Now we're up to like 400 range usually, which is pretty good, but still looking for ways to increase our fan interaction, really build that hashtag friends of the podcast brand if you will. So I'm thinking of, trying to think of easy ways to kind of reward our fans. And I thinking, okay, Beantown, Beaners, how can we do this? So I'm thinking, well, there's got to be some sort of like We Heart Beantown or I Love Beantown button or something. And I'm kind of thinking out loud right now because I thought of this in my head, but I actually haven't Googled it. I'm Googling some sort of like I Love Beantown button. There's got to be something out there. I'll keep looking, and I'll let you know what I find. But you're gonna find a lot of stuff that says Love Boston, but I want one that says like I Love Beantown, the classic I Heart New York. There's got to be one that says like I Love Beantown. Here's one for $1.95 a button, which is more than I'd like to pay, but it just says Heart Beantown. That's good. I think we can do better. BeantownMama.wordpress.com. Well, it's a blog. First article, ladies watch out. There's a naked child in the bathtub. Well, this kid's like 2 years old. He's wearing a tux. The next article is titled Cows Are Scary. Well, if you're curious, it's beantownmama.wordpress.com. It has nothing to do with what we were just talking about, but there's a beantownbuttons.com. I don't think the buttons have anything to do with Beantown, but it must be based out of Baltimore, I guess. Middleton, Massachusetts. Wicked smart. Okay. We'll keep looking for Beantown buttons, but just for the four of you out there listening, keep your ears out for some promotions and stuff moving forward, because we're always looking for ways to energize our fan base. I do want to quickly mention, I mentioned this, I don't know, maybe last week, I don't remember, but TV Guide become a staple of the, you know what, we're going to get to this in our ads. So if you want to know what I'm about to say about TV Guide, you got to listen to Home Pride Oregon first. Let's do it. Are you tired of selling your house for less than a quarter of what it's worth, all because you couldn't find a reliable home inspector in time? Well, Oregon listeners, there's good news. Home Pride Inspection Services in Bend, Oregon is Central Oregon's hottest new home inspection provider, with inspection services including things like heating and cooling, roofing, plumbing, and so much more. Home Pride Oregon is both contractor certified and home inspection certified, so you know you're getting the good stuff. If you're tired of big real estate stranglehold on the home inspection market and you want a safe, certified home inspector that you can trust, call Steve at 541-207-1101 or visit homeprideoregon.com. That's 541-207-1101 or visit homeprideoregon.com. Home Pride Oregon. Inspection perfection. I want to give a shout out to the Samson Q2U series. We were doing podcast via Audacity the last 2 weeks, and 2 weeks ago from Chicago, we had no issues. Last week, we were having some technical issues, and the more I listened to last week's episode from Las Vegas, the more I'm convinced. And if you just go right now and compare the two, this week to last week, because this week sounds great in our testing, I'm convinced that the Samson Q2U series wasn't even what was picking up my audio last week. I think it was just a computer microphone. I don't know what the problem was. We played around with it for a long time, like literally sitting there for like 20 minutes doing audio tests and getting really frustrated from our hotel room in Vegas. But we're back. Samson Q2U series. It's never sounded better. A shout out to the TV Guide, although some problems on the horizon here, right? So first things first, haven't gotten a new TV Guide in over a month at this point. You remember our episode, the aforementioned Northwestern men's assistant basketball coach cover letter episode with Brother Walter Furness. We were talking about the TV Guide we had just received that had Peter Dinklage from Game of Thrones on the cover. And, you know, this is around the time right when Game of Thrones last season had just started, which is already There's only 2 episodes left. So we haven't gotten another TV guide, and now that we're moving, I'm like, yeah, you can do the USPS forwarding, but is it going to be reliable? Am I going to get my TV guide? Am I going to know what's on TV? I haven't known what's been on TV for like the last 2 weeks. It's very troubling. And one thing I would never want to miss, because I honestly have been looking forward to this for 5 months now, Dan Connor, John Goodman, when the Connors returns to ABC at 8/7 Central on Tuesday nights. How am I going to see John Goodman on the cover, red flannel, giving you that signature John Goodman smile that says, he's back? You know, what if I miss it? I'll feel like 2019 is a complete waste if I don't get my TV guide with John Goodman on the cover. I've made that mistake before. Steve Goodman wrote Go Cubs Go. Rest in peace. He died, like 20 years ago? Something like that. Okay. Last ad here. Cuts by Q. Bob and weave. We all know the hairstyle. We all love it. But how many Midtown, Baltimore-based independent barbers can actually give it to you the way you deserve? I'm going to have to change this ad in a couple weeks here. Enter Cuts by Q. It's like Enter Sandman, but different. Cuts by Q has been independently owned and operated since 1995 and is probably one of the better barbershop operations serving Baltimore City, Baltimore County, and Cook County, Illinois. From beehives to bangs, faux hawks to flat tops, and everything in between, call Cuts by Q at 815-298-7200 or email cutsbyq@yahoo.com. That's Cuts, Q-U-T-Z by Q at yahoo.com. Oh, when you need a fresh do, something snappy and new, just call the experts at Cuts by Q. Cuts by Q. I think we could do a barbershop quartet arrangement of the Cuts by Q theme song, and it'd be perfect because you're a barbershop quartet singing about barbershops. Cuts by Q is a barbershop by barbers for barbers. And that's the name of the game for our barbershop boutique combo special. It's Cuts by Q is really the double down of Baltimore-based independent barbershops. It with fewer grams of everything, really. A couple more grams of bullshit, but otherwise fewer grams of, there's no saturated fat, there's no trans fat. If we had any fat, it would all add up and there wouldn't be 25 grams of mystery fat. Maybe that's the third kind. Maybe it's trans fat, saturated fat, and mystery fat. Sometimes I look at myself in the mirror and I'm like, where'd all this mystery fat come from? And then I remember literally what I have for dinner like every night of the week. So it starts to, you can kind of piece it together. Me trying to figure out how I got so fat in life is like Guy Pearce and Memento going back, but with fewer tattoos because I have 0 tattoos, and really it's not much of a mystery. It doesn't take 2 hours to solve. So, Memento, it's a great film, but man, you really got to be locked in to like watch it and try to understand it. It's kind of the same with I hadn't, and this is kind of a shameful admission, but I hadn't seen Mulholland Drive ever until like, I don't know, I watched it like 2 months ago. And that's another film where it's like, oh, it's so good, and it's the type of thing where after you experience it and you reflect on it, you're like, damn, that's a really good movie. But while you're in the thick of it and when you're seeing it for the first time without a lot of context, you're just like really working hard to try to keep up, understand what's going on, piece things together. So, yeah, Memento, Mulholland Drive, great thrillers, but they're not films that will like tell you what's going on. You kind of have to figure it out for yourself, which is what makes like movie reviews of those complex films very impressive, especially when they're able to like give in-depth interpretations right after seeing films. I love movies. That's been widely discussed on the podcast, but I'm not great at like understanding deeply philosophical films or complicated films or films that aren't straightforward, I admittedly have to use a lot of guidance from other people's opinions on the internet to frame my own, or else I'll just be lost. I can do a good job with basic, thriller movies or complex movies, but for things like Mulholland Drive and what were we talking about? Mulholland Drive and Christopher Nolan, Memento. Those ones are tougher to figure out. So if you've never seen either, then go watch them first chance you get, but also be warned that they're not they're not those movies that you throw on in the background and it's just kind of there. They're movies you have to watch if you want to appreciate, or else you'll have it on, it'll be 2 hours later and you'll just be like, oh, that was fine, and you won't actually understand that these are two of the greatest thrillers of all time, two of the greatest movies of all time. So I don't know how we got to Memento. Oh, Fats Domino, and Cuts by Q from the ads. So that's the end of our ads. Thank you to our sponsors. We haven't mentioned this in a long time, but Jack Links, hey, if you're out there, we would love to be in business with you. I've tweeted at you before. I've emailed you. I've harassed you. We even had a Jack Links employee on about this time last year. Again, for those of you who didn't listen to our Uncle Andy interview, if we ever get 1 billion followers, subscribers, listens, any of that stuff, then he's made a promise that we're getting in on a Jack Links contract. So that's what we're working towards. You know, at this level of growth rate, I think we can get there in a couple generations. Beantown Podcast is going to be like one of those things maybe that's handed down from generation to generation. You know, some families have mom's lasagna recipe. Other generations have athletic talent, right? Like Ken Griffey Jr., Ken Griffey Sr., or Vladimir Guerrero Jr. But maybe the Quinn David Furness line is going to be handing down the Beantown Podcast. I don't know. I'm going to have to procreate pretty soon here. We did a Facebook poll, I don't know, 2 or 3 months ago, asking the internet, should I get a kid in 2019? And the results said yes, right? It was like 52 to 48% yes. It was overwhelmingly unanimous. So that's it's on the back burner, frankly, right now, but it's something I think about every day. With this move that's coming up, it's tough to move and get a kid at the same time, but I just, in case there are people out there who are like, is Quinn a man of his word? Is Quinn actually going for a kid in 2019? No, the answer is I'm looking at options. I'm exploring my options. I'll give you a very political answer. If I ever become president, maybe I'll become the first podcast president. I think that could be cool, right? Live stream from the White House. Things to consider. Giving us a lot to think about here on the Beantown Podcast for Mother's Day, Sunday, May 12th. It is Mother's Day, and on minute 44 of our podcast, we would love to get into a little thanks, a little tribute to all the moms out there. So, to my own mom, it was a rocky start, a rocky relationship. At the start of the Beantown Podcast, I wasn't talking about life in general, although I imagine birth is one of those harrowing events. Even if it's, your third time, I imagine it's still a rocky start. But if you followed us from the beginning, you followed the mom subscribing, unsubscribing, resubscribing, re-unsubscribing, and then finally resubscribing saga, S-A-G-A, a saga. And mom's been listening, every other week or so ever since. But thank you to mom for subscribing. Thank you to all the moms out there. I tend to have a little comedic twist to my Mother's Day celebrations every year, a celebration of moms. Last year, I think I posted on my mom's Facebook wall or something. I said, "Happy birthday, Mom." It caused a little bit of confusion on the internet. People were like, "Wait, it's Jane's birthday. We had no idea. We feel bad. We didn't call her. We didn't wish her a happy birthday." Turns out I was confused. It was Mother's Day, not her birthday. It's tough though, because Mother's Day isn't one of those days like Christmas is always December 25th, or July 4th tends to be July 4th. Mother's Day will shift around. So sometimes it's closer to her birthday, sometimes it's not. It's tough to know. But this year, we decided to go with the Doris Roberts angle. So Doris Roberts, rest in peace, widely known for her portrayal as Marie Barone on Everybody Loves Raymond, Ray and Robert's mother, Ray Romano and Brad Garrett, respectively. So I send Ma flowers every year for Mother's Day. It's a tradition like none other. The Masters on CBS. But send Mom a note, and the note says, "Dear Mom, you're no Doris Roberts, but we still love you lots anyways." It got like 4 likes on Facebook, and some more retweets and Snapchat chatter and Instagram re-ups and stuff, but yeah, it did pretty well. Probably not as I think last year's happy birthday wishes was more in line with like the Beantown spirit of spreading misinformation. This year was just flat out funny. But sometimes you get a little bit of both on the Beantown podcast. Sometimes you're wondering why we call Baltimore Beantown, then other times you're just crying tears of a joy, tears of laughter. Sometimes they're just tears, but happy Mother's Day to Mom. One of my not favorite songs, but a song I've had stuck in my head. So Mom's a big Bryan Adams fan, and I don't think she actually is, but most moms would be a fan of Bryan Adams, I think, if you polled them. And a lot of people know Bryan Adams for Summer of '69. But another classic Bryan Adams song is "Everything I Do it all for you." I'm trying to think how this song actually goes, because I kind of butchered it right there. You can tell me it's not worth trying for. This one's for you, Mom. I can't help it. It's nothing I want more. Yeah, I'd fight for you. Oh, I'd lie for you. How's it go? Walk the wire for you. Yeah, I die for you. Everything I do. Ooh, a little key change there. Or, it's true. I think that's how it goes. Everything I do it for you. So, Ma, I couldn't afford to get Bryan Adams on the podcast. I think he's in residency at the Polar Bear Inn or something in Calgary, because Bryan Adams is a Canadian, right? Right? Let's get our research team on this. Bryan Adams, 1959. So he was 10 years old in the summer of '69. I don't know if you should really take his lyrics at face value, because I don't know what 10-year-olds were hanging out by the lake after school getting it on. Maybe, I don't know. Maybe the baby boomers did things a little bit differently. But when I was 10 years old, I was like playing Pokemon in my basement. Bryan Adams, Canadian singer, songwriter, yada, yada, yada. But where was he born? Kingston, Ontario. Where's that? Eastern Ontario. Oh, it's on the northeast edge of Lake Ontario. There's a lot of Ontario going on here. The beginning of the St. Lawrence River and at the mouth of the Cataraqui River. Sounds like cataracts. Things you get in your eyes. Oh, generally pronounced Cataraqui. Cataraqui. Wow. Cataraqui. Generally pronounced Cataraqui. Cataraqui. That's crazy. Dude, French is a crazy language. And then you get into Eastern Canada and you got some French stuff. You got some Native American stuff. You got some, I don't know if you really call it Canadian stuff, because I don't know if you really consider Canadian to be a sort of national culture. It is now, but, back in the 18th century. French-Indian War, classic war, one of my favorite wars. But yeah, Mother's Day, happy Mother's Day to you, Mom. My favorite Mother's Day moment or memory, this is a classic one. I was probably a sophomore in college and went to Wrigley Field for Mother's Day, Cubs versus Nationals. And so Bryce Harper, this was like the 2015 season or something. Bryce Harper was just off to a blazing start for the Nats. No one could shut him down. And so we get to the Cubs, and it's like Sunday game, of course, Sunday afternoon at Wrigley. Beautiful day. They had done a really good job, I think, so far in the series of keeping him down, but they'd kind of been pitching away to him. Maybe he had a couple of hits in the first two games. I don't really recall, but he hadn't done any significant damage. So you get to game 3 of the series. Cubs are looking for a sweep. Get your brooms out. A sweep of the Nats. And I don't know if this has ever happened in sports before or in baseball before. I don't know if it's happened again, but they walked Bryce Harper, I believe, 6 times. And then he reached another time on like an infield single or something. It was crazy. Or maybe he struck out. I don't remember. But the game went into the 13th inning. And it was like 3-3, I think. They had given the Nats so many opportunities to score because every time they would walk Bryce Harper, Ryan Zimmerman, Nationals legend, would come up. And he was just, this is already, tail end of Zimmerman's career. I think he's retired now. But Zim was on the Nationals from day one. He was around for a long time. But he was having a really tough go of it that weekend and that season in general. So they kept putting Bryce on. Oftentimes with like runners at first and second, they would put him on then to load the bases just to get to Zimmerman. And Zimmerman kept sucking it up, strikeouts, pop-outs, double plays, yada, yada, yada. So a young Javy Baez, still extremely unproven, and now Javy Baez has now reached the like star level where everyone appreciates him, even though he'll occasionally like make a dumb mistake. But overall, he's now, like cemented his place as one of the best players in the game. Back in 2015, Javy Baez is this like young hotshot guy from the minors who like can make incredible plays, but then also makes like really stupid plays and has no plate discipline. Well, Javy Baez comes up in the bottom of the 13th and crack with his pink bat launches one into the left field bleachers. You can go watch it on YouTube. One of my favorite moments from Wrigley Field, bottom of the 13th. It was a hell of a game, probably 5 hours long or so with all the Bryce Harper walks. And the Cubs should have lost so many times, but they managed to wiggle their way out of tough situations. And then Javy Baez with a walk-off shot in the bottom of the 13th. I think it was it a 3-run homer or was it a solo homer? I think it was a 3-run homer, though. I'll have to go watch it after this. But so, it was Mother's Day. It was beautiful weather. The pink bats, Javy Baez walk-off, Cubs win. What better way to celebrate Mother's Day? My mom was nowhere, had nothing to do with that story. I think she was at home in Rockford, but or in Oregon. I don't recall where, but it was a great Mother's Day. I had a really good time. So happy Mother's Day to all the moms out there. Hope you're doing well. I always tell my mom, you carried me for 9 months. Now let me carry you. And really the last 24 years, it's been kind of that balance. So you might say, hey, Quinn, 9 months versus 24 years is not really balanced. Well, I say, hey, you try having a person inside of you and then ejecting them through your private parts, and then we can talk about comparing 9 months to 24 years. So, Ma, I'm not one of those haters out there who says 9 months is nothing compared to 24 years. I'm happy to do it. Here's to another 24 years. And that'll be 48, which is Jimmy's number, which is a good luck number. So that's all I got for you. Another long podcast in the books here. I'm going to tell you right now, though, I'm just reflecting. It's always good to reflecting on the last 55 minutes. And This was a podcast where we didn't really say much, but I felt like I was able to kind of carry it. Oftentimes we have these podcasts where we always say they're objectively terrible, and then I actually feel like I go out there with a vendetta to actually prove just how serious I am when I say that. Today was light. It was fun. We talked about double downs. We didn't talk about Churchill downs, but we'll get to that in a little bit. A couple more episodes coming up here. Preakness next week, by the way. I'm not going to go because it's expensive, but it is like 3 miles from my apartment. If anyone's curious, Pimlico. Mother's Day, we sang a little Bryan Adams. We had a lot of good words today. I'll also mention Mom, one of my favorite palindromes. Love a good palindrome. And yeah, I think that's about all we got. So thanks to everyone for tuning in. Thanks to our sponsors, Home Pride Oregon, Cuts by Q, TV Guide, and Samsung Q2U series. These last two are unofficial sponsors. But yeah, thanks for following us. Don't forget to check out the Beantown blog. Don't forget that we have added to beantownpodcast.com. We now have a section just for Cuts by Q, so you can again look at some of the different cuts. If you think I'm like, apologies for language, if you think I'm completely bullshitting you on Cuts by Q, I'm not. I do cut my own hair, so take that for what you will, but I'll also occasionally cut some other people's hair. It's not frequent because I don't get asked very often, but it's a $20 flat rate, right? You're not going to beat that. I'm not going to butcher your hair unless you ask me for the blondie cut or something. So Jane Lynch maybe. Yeah, don't forget to follow us on Twitter. We are at Twitter at BeantownCast. You can like us on Facebook. Thanks to some of our partners, Local Glow podcast, Tariq Shahada. Go listen to them. Those guys are really good. They put in, they do about a tenth of the episodes that we do, but it's about 100 times the quality. So there's kind of a trade-off there. Also, I want to mention Jack Campbell, a local musician originally from Duluth, then in Chicago, now I believe operates out of Boulder, but went to school with Jack. He released a new EP recently, Lucky Break. You go find it on YouTube, but shell out the $4 on Bandcamp. It's $1 a song. You can afford it. Jack is great. You're going to like his music if you haven't listened to it yet. You can find his Absentee on YouTube. Has his music video for that's well over a couple 100,000 views. So Jack's putting in good work. Don't forget to email us any comments, concerns, grievances, BeantownPodcast, yahoo.com. That's Beantown, BEANTOWN podcast at yahoo.com. And yeah, I think we're good. Next week we'll be right here, one of our last episodes from Beantown, but the question was raised to me, and this is the last thing I'll say. I was in Chicago 2 weeks ago having breakfast with a friend of the podcast, and my friend asked me, okay, so you're moving from Baltimore back to Chicago. Are you still going to be able to call it the Beantown Podcast? And I said, what do you mean? Why would I call it? I mean, what's the point of me calling it the Beantown Podcast when I live in Baltimore? She says, well, isn't Baltimore's Beantown, right? That right there, if anyone asks, why do you call it the Beantown Podcast? It's that conversation exactly why I call it the Beantown Podcast. There is no better way for me to relate to you or convey to you why I named it the Beantown Podcast, right? One of our unofficial slogans, spreading misinformation, your number one source for misinformation on the internet. So that's why I do everything I do it all for you. And that's for the moms out there, and that's for the hashtag friends of the podcast out there. For all of us at Beantown Podcast, beantownpodcast.com, thanks for listening. Have a great Mother's Day. We'll see you next week.